When I first met Kayla, I wanted to like her. I really did. She was my boyfriend, Harry's only sister, his only sibling, in fact, and I believed that if I was going to have a future with him, I needed to build a bond with his family, including her. At first, Kayla seemed warm, friendly even. She laughed at my jokes, complimented my outfits, and sent me Instagram memes. But that kindness faded fast. It was like the closer Harry and I got, the colder she became. And it didn't take long for me to realize that her smiles had been a mask one that slipped off the moment she realized I was here to stay. Kayla didn't just dislike me. She actively tried to sabotage my relationship with her brother. Harry had dated one of Kayla's best friends in high school, something I had no issue with. Teen relationships come and go, and it was all long before I was ever in the picture. But to Kayla, that high school fling should have been permanent. She constantly pushed Harry toward her friends, even after he had clearly moved on. I remember when Harry and I were only a few months into dating. We were having dinner with his parents, and out of nowhere, Kayla brought up his ex-girlfriend. "You know, Sarah's doing really well now," she said sweetly. "She just moved into a gorgeous condo downtown. Maybe you should catch up with her sometime." Harry blinked at her. "Why would I do that? I'm dating someone." He looked at me, squeezed my hand under the table. Kayla just shrugged and smirked. This wasn't a one-time thing. She brought up Harry's exes every chance she got. She even accidentally invited one of them to a family barbecue once. She said she'd just run into her and thought it would be rude not to include her. But it wasn't just about Harry's past. She found ways to belittle me directly, too. Kayla would monitor my social media like a hawk. My account was public, and I started noticing that she was always one of the first to view my Instagram stories, yet she never liked a single post. Once, I posted a picture from a beach trip. Nothing scandalous, just me in a one-piece, standing by the waves. That same night, Kayla texted Harry, furious that I was showing off and disrespecting their family. She called me inappropriate, said I wasn't wife material. It hurt, not because I cared what she thought, but because I could see it getting to Harry. He loved his sister even if she was difficult. He kept trying to keep the peace, hoping she'd come around. But Kayla didn't come around. As our relationship deepened, so did her hostility, and when we got engaged, the facade finally shattered. At our engagement dinner, while our parents cheered and friends clinked glasses in celebration, Kayla stood up without a word and walked out. No congratulations, no hug, just silence. Later, she texted Harry in a rage, accusing him of betraying her by not telling her about the engagement before everyone else. She claimed she was the most important woman in his life and that I was stealing him away. Then she messaged me, a wall of angry words, half threats, half demands. She said if I was going to be in her brother's life, I better learn how to respect the family hierarchy. I didn't respond, not because I was afraid, but because I realized nothing I said would ever be enough. Kayla didn't want peace. She wanted power, and I was done pretending she didn't mean to hurt me. I wish I could say things got better after our engagement, that Kayla learned to put aside her jealousy and simply be happy for her brother. But that would be a lie. The weeks leading up to our wedding became a battleground me, trying to create the most beautiful day of my life, and Kayla doing everything she could to undermine it. It wasn't just passive-aggressive comments anymore, it was blatant sabotage. I remember sitting with my mother-in-law, planning the centerpiece arrangements. Nothing too fancy soft pinks and whites, gentle pastels to match the spring theme. But Kayla, who had quietly been lurking in the doorway, burst out laughing. "This is your idea of elegance?" she mocked. "No wonder I always hoped Harry would end up with someone who actually has taste." The room went dead silent. I looked at her, stunned. My mother-in-law, bless her, tried to intervene, gently telling Kayla her comment was out of line. But I'd had enough. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from frustration. "That's it," I said, standing up. "You are no longer invited to our wedding." Kayla's jaw dropped like I had just slapped her across the face. She gasped like she couldn't believe someone had the nerve to challenge her. But I didn't take it back. I meant every word. I couldn't let her ruin that day for me. Later that night, she texted Harry, sobbing and begging for him to control me, claiming I was being dramatic and disrespectful. But for the first time, Harry didn't cave. He told her if she couldn't apologize and behave, she would not be welcome. The next day, I got a message from Kayla, a half-hearted apology. It was stiff, impersonal, and clearly written through gritted teeth. I left it on read. Still, I agreed to let her come. Not because I wanted her there, but because I didn't want her spinning a story about being excluded. I thought, if she showed up, maybe she'd behave. I was wrong. She walked into our wedding wearing a full-length black dress and a lace veil like she was attending a funeral, not a celebration. Guests whispered. Some even laughed nervously, and she played into it. She told anyone who would listen that she was mourning the loss of her brother. Like our wedding was some kind of betrayal. Harry tried to pull her aside during the reception and asked her to tone it down. She rolled her eyes and told him I was controlling and that he was letting me change him. When she kept making a scene, my in-laws stepped in. Calm but firm, they asked her to leave. It was humiliating, but in a strange way, it was also freeing. Because that day, I stopped trying to win her over. I had tried being kind. I had tried ignoring the digs. I had tried forgiving, but it didn't matter. Kayla didn't hate me because of who I was. She hated me because she didn't want to share Harry with anyone, not even his wife. After the wedding, I made it clear. She was not to be around our future children. I didn't trust her. And even though she cried to her parents, begged for forgiveness, nothing about her behavior ever changed. For a while, she stayed quiet, until life, in its cruel irony, decided to give her a tragedy, a miscarriage with her boyfriend Jamie. It devastated her. It devastated all of us. Despite everything, I felt for her. We opened the door again cautiously, thinking maybe grief had changed her, and for a little while it seemed like it had. She played with our son, Nate. She smiled more. She apologized without prompting. She even brought gifts. I thought, maybe this was the version of Kayla we could live with. Maybe, just maybe, things would be okay. But with Kayla, peace never lasts long, and I would soon learn just how far she was willing to go to keep the spotlight and how dangerous that obsession would become. We should have known the peace wouldn't last. With Kayla, it never did. At first, her grief after the miscarriage seemed genuine. She became softer, almost fragile. She held Nate like he was made of glass, smiled through teary eyes, and even thanked me for letting her be a part of his life. Against my better judgment, I let my guard down. I told myself people could change, that maybe motherhood, even briefly experienced, had awakened something kinder in her. But kindness, for Kayla, was just another costume. Soon, the cracks began to show again. She'd complain endlessly about how unfair life was, how nothing ever worked out for her. It was always someone else's fault, a toxic friend, a rude boss, a heartless doctor. Everyone was to blame but her. Then she married Jamie. None of us were invited, not Harry, not me, not even his parents. When we asked why, she claimed it was because she didn't want drama. She was afraid I'd wear black to her wedding, like she had done to mine. I nearly laughed at the absurdity of it. The only reason I hadn't protested her behavior years ago was because I didn't want to create a scene. And now she was rewriting history. Harry, ever the peacemaker, was furious. For the first time, he told her straight, if she wanted to exclude his wife, she was excluding him too. And with that, his parents backed him. They told Kayla they wouldn't pay for a wedding. She wouldn't even let her own brother attend. Kayla cried. She blamed me. She said I'd stolen her family. But for once, no one caved. Not even her husband. Eventually, she apologized, teary, charming, convincing. She said she'd been wrong. She missed her family, she missed Nate, and honestly, I wanted to believe her. So we went to her wedding, and for a while it looked like maybe, just maybe, she was starting fresh. Until she showed up at our door 6 months later, suitcase in hand, eyes red from crying. Jamie left, she whispered. He said he couldn't do it anymore. We let her stay, because what else do you do when your sister-in-law is crumbling? She moved in for a few weeks and every day felt heavier than the last. She blamed Jamie for everything, claimed he was distant, selfish, broken. But beneath her tears was a sharp edge, a kind of desperation I couldn't ignore. She became fixated on me, on Harry, on our routine. She questioned why I always changed clothes at the gym, why I bathed before work, why I wore makeup to staff meetings. It was invasive, unnerving. I chalked it up to her being paranoid and insecure. But then, it escalated. One night over dinner, while Harry's parents were visiting, his mom casually mentioned a friend who'd left her husband after catching him cheating. Out of nowhere, Kayla asked if Harry and I had signed a prenup. The table fell silent. Harry, unfazed, replied calmly, "No. We make similar incomes. We trust each other." But Kayla pressed on. "You never know, Harry. People cheat, even the ones you trust." Then she looked at me, right at me. I nearly choked on my water. "You're always going out, always carrying extra clothes. Who knows where you really go after the gym?" Her tone was light, like it was a joke, but her eyes were sharp. I could feel my face burn, not from guilt, but rage. Before I could respond, my father-in-law slammed his fork down. "That's enough, Kayla." But she kept going. "If you love your brother so much," she smirked, "don't you deserve to know if your son's really yours?" That did it. Harry stood up so fast, his chair toppled. His face was crimson, jaw clenched. I'd never seen him that angry. "You want to talk about kids?" he said, voice shaking. "You don't get to question my wife or my son. You don't even deserve to be a mother." The room froze. Kayla burst into tears, but no one comforted her. Not even Jamie, who had come to pick her up. He just stared at his plate, silent. That night, Harry and I decided she was done. No more visits, no more chances. She was out of our lives for good, or so we thought, because nothing could have prepared us for what she would do next. 2 months ago, we found out we were expecting again. It wasn't planned, but it felt like a blessing. Harry and I had talked about growing our family eventually, but with everything we'd gone through, we weren't in a rush. Still, when that little plus sign appeared on the test, I cried happy tears this time. Harry kissed my forehead and whispered, "This time, we do everything right." We decided to share the news at Harry's birthday. His parents, Millie and Phil, were throwing a big backyard cookout. Friends, family, neighbors, all gathered under string lights and paper lanterns. It felt safe, warm, like we were entering a new chapter of joy. And then, Kayla showed up. We hadn't invited her. Nobody had. She strolled in like she belonged, clutching a wrapped gift and smiling as if the past year hadn't happened. I froze when I saw her. My stomach twisted. I hadn't seen her since that dinner, the prenup comment, the accusation about Nate's paternity, Harry's outburst. But there she was, hugging Harry, complimenting his new haircut, laughing like she was part of the family again. I stepped back, watching it unfold. My hands instinctively went to my belly, a subtle reminder to protect what mattered most. Millie pulled us aside. "We had no idea she was coming," she whispered. "We can ask her to leave." But Harry shook his head. "No drama today," he said. "Not now." So we let her stay. When the time came to announce the pregnancy, I stood beside Harry, both of us glowing as we told the crowd we were expecting baby number 2. Cheers erupted. Millie started crying. Phil clapped Harry on the back. Friends rushed over with hugs and excited questions. Everyone was happy. Except Kayla. She didn't clap, didn't smile. She just stood there frozen, her face unreadable. Then she quietly turned away, disappearing into the crowd. I tried not to think much of it. Maybe she was still grieving her lost pregnancy. Maybe the news hit harder than she'd expected. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. Later, while I sat sipping lemonade and chatting with my mom, Kayla approached. She was beaming, too much. "I'm so happy for you," she said, "truly, and I wanted to make things right." She held out a plate of food. "I brought this over for you. I know shrimp is your favorite." My heart dropped. I stared at the plate: rice, veggies, and unmistakably shrimp. "I'm allergic," I said gently. "You know that." "Oh." She blinked, feigning surprise. "I must have forgotten." I nodded and smiled politely. "It's okay, I'll get my own." She shrugged and walked away, leaving the plate behind. That's when Jamie walked up. He'd seen the exchange and asked if I was okay. I explained what had happened, and without missing a beat, he said, "Well, I love shrimp," and took the plate for himself. Not even 5 minutes later, Jamie collapsed. He'd barely touched the food when he started coughing violently, grabbing at his throat. Panic spread like wildfire. Guests dropped their drinks, chairs scraped back. Someone screamed for help. Kayla rushed to his side, eyes wide with horror. "What happened?" she cried. "The plate." I pointed at it, heart pounding. Someone called 911. Paramedics arrived within minutes. They rushed Jamie away while Kayla sobbed in the driveway. My hands trembled. I felt lightheaded. That plate had been meant for me. Me. Jamie took my place literally. That night, I couldn't sleep. Harry sat beside me, rubbing my back as I stared at the ceiling. I didn't say it out loud, but we both knew. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't an allergic reaction gone wrong. Someone had tried to hurt me, and if not for Jamie, they might have succeeded. That night after the party, I barely slept. I kept replaying the moment over and over. Jamie taking the plate, the shrimp, the violent coughing, and the way Kayla looked at me when he collapsed. There was something about her eyes. Not panic, not confusion. Something darker, something calculated. I tried to shake it off as guilt for letting Jamie eat what was meant for me. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. The next morning, Millie and Phil, Harry's parents, called us. They were shaken. Millie's voice trembled. "We can't go home," she said. "What if it had been you?" We invited them to stay with us. They brought overnight bags and heavy hearts. Nate, thankfully, was too young to understand what was happening, but the adults in the room carried a silent storm. That night, after we tucked Nate into bed and I tried to settle my nausea with ginger tea, I finally told Harry what had really happened. "Kayla gave me that plate," I whispered. He froze. "Are you sure?" She handed it to me herself, said she wanted to make things right, said she was excited about the baby. He stared at me, processing. Then his jaw clenched and he stood up. "We're checking the cameras." Millie and Phil's backyard was covered by security cameras, 4 of them, with clear views of the tables, food station, and seating area. Harry pulled up the footage on their camera app and fast-forwarded to the moment in question. There it was, clear as day. Kayla walking up to me with the plate, handing it over, me politely refusing, Jamie stepping in. The moment of collapse. Silence fell over the living room. No one said a word. Phil exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. Millie covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes wide. "I thought she was getting better," Millie whispered. "She said she was in therapy." Harry didn't respond. His hands were shaking. The truth was undeniable. "She tried to poison my wife," he said softly. "She tried to hurt my baby." We all knew it then. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't carelessness. It was a deliberate, premeditated act. Kayla had tampered with the food, knowing my allergy could have sent me into anaphylactic shock. Instead, Jamie was in the hospital, unconscious, fighting for his life. The next step was clear. Phil called the police. He handed over the footage, detailed what had happened, and explained who the plate had been meant for. The officer took notes, asked questions, and promised a full investigation. Because Jamie was the one who had consumed the food, he would need to decide whether to press charges. Later that evening, Harry went to the hospital to speak with him. I stayed home, curled up on the couch, trying to keep myself calm for the baby's sake. I couldn't stop thinking about what might have happened if I had taken that first bite. What might have happened to our child, to Nate, to Harry. When Harry returned, he looked exhausted. "Jamie's awake," he said. "I told him everything." "And?" I asked. Harry sat beside me. "He's pressing charges, and he's divorcing her." I swallowed hard. Good. But it didn't feel good. It felt heartbreaking, because this wasn't just about a toxic sister-in-law anymore. This was about attempted murder, about betrayal so deep it cut through blood and bone. Millie wept quietly that night. "She was our daughter," she whispered. "She made her choice," Harry replied. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know what the court would decide or what Kayla's next move might be, but I knew this. I was done being her target, and I wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. The weeks that followed felt like moving through fog. Jamie, still recovering, filed an official police report. The security footage was damning, and when confronted, Kayla didn't even bother denying it. She broke down crying in front of the officers, saying she wasn't thinking clearly, and just wanted to make a point. A point? With shrimp? Knowing full well I could go into anaphylactic shock? What terrified me most was how calm she'd been that day, laughing, smiling, hugging family. She poisoned me with a plate of food she delivered by hand, then stood in the background pretending nothing was wrong while Jamie collapsed in front of us all. I couldn't stop picturing her eyes. Vacant, detached, the kind of eyes that chill you to the bone. Millie and Phil turned over all evidence to the police, and within days, Kayla was arrested. Her mugshot was plastered across local news outlets. "Woman arrested for food tampering at family gathering," the headline read. The story went viral on social media, especially after people learned she was pregnant herself. Yes, pregnant. Apparently, she had planned to announce it that same night, and when Harry and I announced ours first, she snapped. She confessed everything: the jealousy, the years of resentment, the bitterness she carried ever since Harry chose me. She admitted she had always imagined one of her friends marrying him, not some outsider. Her confession stunned everyone, including Jamie. When Harry visited him again at the hospital, he shared something that broke all of us. "She wanted me to say it was an accident," Jamie said, voice barely above a whisper. "She begged me not to press charges, said I owed her." Harry didn't say anything. He just put his hand on Jamie's shoulder and nodded, but the decision was already made. Jamie filed for divorce and confirmed to the DA that he wanted to move forward with prosecution. Kayla was charged with food tampering, reckless endangerment, and attempted assault. Given that I was pregnant at the time, the charges carried even more weight. Her bail was denied. She sat in jail awaiting her court date. Millie cried for days. Phil became cold and quiet, like something inside him had shut down. Harry didn't say much either, but every time he looked at me, I saw that quiet rage behind his eyes. Not because he hated his sister, but because she had nearly taken something from him that he could never get back. Our child, me, my peace. I couldn't eat unless I prepared the food myself. I refused takeout, wouldn't even touch leftovers. My OB noticed my weight dropping and insisted I begin therapy to manage the stress. She was right. The paranoia was consuming me. Every forkful, every bite, I questioned it. Was it safe? Was I safe? Harry sat with me one night on the couch, both of us wrapped in a blanket, his hand resting on my stomach. "We're going to be okay," he whispered. "I swear to you, we are going to be okay." I wanted to believe him, and in that moment I did. But healing doesn't happen overnight. And forgiveness? That takes even longer, especially when the betrayal comes from inside your own family. The last we heard, Kayla was still in county jail. Her lawyer tried to argue for a reduced sentence due to her pregnancy, claiming emotional distress. But the prosecution had the tape, the motive, the confession, the witness statements. There was no getting around what she did. She'd weaponized my allergy to try and send a message. And even though I'd survived, that plate was never meant for Jamie. It had my name on it, literally and figuratively. Now it was the justice system's turn to respond. And as her court date drew closer, one thing became clear. This time, there would be consequences. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Not just the air conditioning, but the atmosphere stiff, heavy, as if everyone inside had braced themselves for impact. Harry held my hand as we walked in. I was nearly 8 months pregnant by then, my belly visible beneath my loose navy dress. It had taken everything in me to show up that morning, but I needed to be there, not just for justice, for closure. Kayla was already seated when we arrived, hair pulled back, hands cuffed, her orange jumpsuit a jarring contrast to the polished wood of the courtroom. Her eyes darted when she saw me. I couldn't tell if it was guilt or panic. Maybe both. The prosecutor wasted no time. They presented the footage, Kayla handing me the plate, me handing it to Jamie, him collapsing minutes later. The courtroom was silent as the video played. You could hear a pin drop when Jamie took the stand. He looked so different, thinner, tired, but clear-eyed and steady. "She handed the plate to my sister-in-law," he said. "If I hadn't taken it, she might have been the one lying in a hospital bed. pregnant, allergic to shrimp, and she knew that. He didn't cry, he didn't yell, but his voice shook with something deeper than anger. Betrayal, hurt. When the defense tried to paint Kayla as an emotionally unstable pregnant woman acting out of stress and hormones, I wanted to scream, but I didn't have to. Because Kayla confessed. Again. I snapped, she said. They were supposed to wait. I was going to tell everyone I was pregnant, and they stole that moment. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted her to feel scared, like I always feel. The judge was unmoved, and when sentencing came, the room was quiet again. Intent to harm, regardless of result, is not excusable, the judge said. Your actions could have killed an innocent man, or a pregnant woman. This court finds you guilty on all charges. 6 years, no parole for at least 4. The courtroom didn't erupt, it just exhaled. Millie sobbed quietly. Phil sat like a statue, face unreadable. Harry squeezed my hand, and I felt his breath hitch in his throat. For the first time, he wasn't just my husband. He was a son grieving the loss of a sister who'd gone too far. A week later, our daughter was born. We named her Grace, because after everything we'd endured, that's what it felt like, Grace. A second chance, a reminder that life, even in its darkest moments, could still offer light. Nate became the best big brother. At just 5, he would sit next to Grace's crib with a book, reading stories to her while she cooed and kicked her feet. Watching them together softened the parts of me that had been hardened by fear. We never brought Kayla up around Nate, not yet. One day we'd tell him, when he's older, when he can understand that sometimes people you love make choices you can't excuse. Jamie still visits, less often but enough. He and Harry talk, sometimes about Kayla, sometimes about nothing at all. He told me he doesn't blame me anymore, that he forgives me for the plate. I still tear up when I think about it. I've started therapy for the food paranoia, the anxiety, the memories. It's helping slowly, but what helps the most? Holding Grace in my arms, knowing she came into the world untouched by her aunt's hate, knowing that despite everything, we're here, together, healing, and every time Harry kisses her forehead, I see it in his eyes. We've been through hell, but we're not broken, we're rebuilding, and this time, we're stronger than ever. 6 months after Grace was born, the world finally began to feel still again. The noise that had once defined our lives, the sirens, the courtrooms, the whispers, was replaced with lullabies, baby giggles, and the soft creak of Nate's bedroom door as he tiptoed into ours, asking if he could just check on Grace real quick. Some days, I still woke up startled, half expecting chaos. It had become so familiar, I didn't know how to live without it. But slowly, I was learning that peace doesn't have to feel foreign. It can feel like warm coffee at 6 a.m., a toddler's arms wrapped around your waist, or the way Harry smiles at our daughter like she hung the moon. Jamie filed for full custody of his and Kayla's unborn child the day after her sentencing. She had tried to reach out to him through her attorney, writing letters from jail filled with half apologies and hopeful promises. But Jamie didn't respond, not once. I'm not raising a child with a woman who tried to poison someone out of jealousy, he told us, but I'll raise that child right, because they deserve better than the chaos they were born into. He wasn't trying to be a hero, just a man trying to do the right thing. The state granted him sole custody a month before the baby was due. Kayla gave birth alone, shackled to a hospital bed, surrounded by guards. A baby boy, healthy and innocent despite everything. Jamie named him Elijah. He brought Elijah over once to meet us. Harry held him gently, arms practiced and patient, while Nate peeked over the edge of the couch, curious but kind. Grace slept soundly through the visit, unaware of how much healing her presence had already started. I'll never forget what Jamie said before he left that day. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm choosing to build something better. For him, for myself, for all of us. It hit me hard, because in the end, that's what we were all doing, trying to build something better from the ruins. My relationship with Harry deepened. We talked more. We laughed more. We no longer tiptoed around pain. We faced it together. Sometimes it looked like 3 a.m. diaper changes, sometimes like tearful conversations at the dinner table about Kayla, about family, about betrayal, but always Always, we held on to each other. One afternoon, I found Harry in Grace's room, staring out the window. I asked him what was on his mind. "I think about her a lot," he said softly. "Kayla, how different things could have been if someone had helped her sooner. If she had asked for help. If we had known how much she was hurting." His voice cracked. "She didn't just destroy parts of our lives, she destroyed herself." I placed my hand on his shoulder. "We did what we could," I whispered, "and now we do what we must to protect what we have." Kayla eventually wrote me a letter. It came through her attorney. I sat with it for 3 days before I opened it. In it, she talked about therapy, about shame, about the darkness she'd been living with since childhood. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just said, "I see what I've done. And I see you finally for who you are, not a rival, not a threat, but the woman who gave my brother peace." I cried after reading it, not because I forgave her, but because I knew I never would. And that was okay. Forgiveness isn't always the end goal. Sometimes it's just knowing you've moved on, even if they haven't. Today, my family feels whole, not perfect, but real. We still keep the baby monitor on at night. We still burn the toast some mornings. But we're okay, because we've learned that peace isn't what you're given. It's what you choose day by day, hour by hour, breath by breath. Life moved forward, not with loud declarations, but in quiet, healing steps. It had been a year since Kayla went to prison. Elijah turned 1 last month. Jamie threw him a small party in his backyard, just a few friends and family. No themes, no drama. Just a cake with too much frosting, a few toddlers running barefoot in the grass, and the kind of laughter that doesn't echo with pain. We were invited. I wasn't sure I wanted to go at first. I still carried that lingering shadow of guilt, even though everyone told me it wasn't my fault. But Harry looked at me, gently took my hand and said, "You don't have to carry that anymore. We show up not for the past, but for the future." So we went. Nate brought Grace's stroller while I carried a gift wrapped in pale blue. Jamie's backyard wasn't big, but it was full of light streamers flapping lazily in the summer breeze, picnic tables cluttered with finger foods and juice boxes. Elijah was crawling around in the grass, his little fists full of cake. He looked up when we arrived and beamed a gummy, innocent smile. Jamie walked over and hugged us both. There was no awkwardness, no lingering pain in his voice, just warmth. "I'm glad you're here," he said. "He deserves to know the people who stood tall when everything fell apart." For the first time, I believed him. As we sat in the shade and watched the kids play, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Stillness. No tension in my shoulders, no fear in my gut. Just a quiet acceptance of what had been and gratitude for what remained. After the party, Jamie pulled Harry aside. I watched from a distance as they spoke soft, serious tones, nods, a few smiles. When Harry walked back to me, his eyes were glassy. "He wants to put Kayla's name on Elijah's birth certificate," Harry said. "She's still his mother no matter what. But he asked if I'd be willing to be listed as Elijah's legal guardian if anything ever happened to him." I blinked, stunned. "What did you say?" Harry looked at Grace in her stroller, then back at me. I said yes. I didn't protest. I didn't question, because I knew what he meant. It wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building a foundation strong enough to hold someone else's future. Weeks passed. One morning, while folding laundry, I found an old photo tucked into Nate's drawer. It was from our wedding before everything with Kayla exploded. She was in the background, standing off to the side in her black dress, arms crossed. I stared at the photo for a long time. So much had changed. Kayla was still in prison serving her sentence. We hadn't heard from her again. No letters, no calls. Part of me wondered if she was still trying to make sense of what she did. If motherhood, even behind bars, had changed her the way it changed me. Some wounds, I've learned, don't close cleanly, they scar, but they stop bleeding. Eventually. Harry and I now spend our evenings on the porch, watching Nate chase fireflies while Grace babbles in his arms. There's peace here, not the kind that comes from pretending everything's fine, but the kind you earn after walking through fire and choosing to rebuild with open hands instead of clenched fists. And Jamie? He's doing well. He's found someone new, someone kind. He's taking things slow, and we're happy for him. Elijah is thriving, a child born from chaos, now surrounded by nothing but love. As for me, I finally sleep through the night. I finally eat without wondering who made my food. I finally look in the mirror and see a woman who survived betrayal, heartbreak, and fear but never lost herself. Kayla was a chapter. But this is the story I get to write, and it's only just beginning. If this story moved you or made you think about the importance of boundaries, healing, and self-respect, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they are not alone. And if you want more powerful real-life stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to Reddit Confessions and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Because sometimes the most unforgettable stories are the ones that come from the heart.